introduce our speaker this evening. And I'm going to ask actually him to do us a favor because I know that he's in charge of about 19,000 prisoners and has I don't know how many thousand employees, deputies, and civilians that work with him. But a lot of us, since we're patrolled by the LAPD, just really don't have an idea other than he's in charge of jails. What does the sheriff do? You know, what does he do? You know, we've never had a deputy. We've had you here a number of times, but you know, we don't interact with the deputy sheriffs except once, which I remember in the after the earthquake. They were patrolling Sherman Oaks with the LAPD. So with that, I'd like to introduce the Sheriff for LA County, Lee Barker.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to stand right here in the center of this pole so that I can have everyone look at me and I can see you. And if I'm missing you, I'll try to move left to right. First of all, thank you so much, Richard, for the kind invitation. I also congratulate all of you for taking the time from your valuable lives and being here, because this is democracy at its finest. It also establishes a great amount of what I call community excellence, because no matter how hard government works, without your feedback, input, and all the things that make a quality of life sustainable, must have this kind of engagement. So the Sheriff's Department is an interesting institution. It began in 1850 when California became a state. And the sheriff is elected as the chief law enforcement officer of the county, which means you have certain powers, but you don't have unlimited powers. The responsibilities are in three given areas. At the time that LA County became a county, it was actually all of Orange County and Riverside County and a good portion of San Bernardino County, all of Kern County and Ventura County for 10,000 people. It broke apart as we progressed with more sensible regional government. And so the sheriff, as the chief law enforcement officer, did all the policing in those good old days for all that region. And it was interesting because constables had to be developed as communities were developing outside the core city of Los Angeles. And those constables were deputy constables commissioned by the sheriff. The city of LA incorporated in the 1871, and that's when the city formed its own police department. At that point, an incorporated city is removed from the policing responsibility of the sheriff. And that's happened enough times to the point where we are today. Right now, there are approximately 45 independent police departments. And there are 42 cities that could have their own police departments, but they contract to the sheriff's department. So the sheriff's department polices 2 million people in those 42 cities and reports to 42 mayors and 42 city councils. And you can tell by that statement that I'm kissing up to an awful lot of people there. And at the same time, it's a better way to go about doing business because they can fire you at any time, so you're gonna really be on the ball. And so in the unincorporated areas, there's about 140 communities that are unincorporated throughout the whole county. So we have that obligation, and that's another 1.5 million people in those unincorporated areas. And then you take it a step further, the Sheriff's Department under a contract with the Metropolitan Transit Authority does all the policing for the transit system. And that's where you see deputy cars on your various bus lines and your transit lines. And then if you go to Pierce College or some of the other colleges in the Valley, you'll see the deputies on their campuses because the community college district contracts to the Sheriff's Department to police those college campuses. So the whole policing side of this with transit colleges and contract cities and unincorporated areas, all that, That's about 4 million people, which is the equivalent of the size of the city of Los Angeles. But then there's another responsibility, and that's the courts. And we have the largest municipal court in the United States, 600 judges on the bench, and busiest court system in America. We protect the judges, we bailiff the courts, we serve 15 million processes, meaning legal process to various people in litigation with each other, subpoenas and the like. And that's a very active responsibility. And then all these courthouses, and there's about 38 of them around the county, they have lockups in there for prisoners, and we man all those lockups, which then now leads to the third point, and that is the jails. And currently, the jails house 19,000 prisoners. They also are staffed by an entire nurse and medical care system. I actually run a medical service of about 1,300 people, including doctors and nurses and practitioners, psychologists and all that. That becomes the whole of it all. There's 18,000 employees in the Sheriff's Department. The budget is $2.8 billion, and it's a lot of headaches. So that's the department in general. And my general message to you is a simple one. The Sheriff's Department is an organization that, in my opinion, is most directly accountable to the public because, one, I'm elected. Two, I believe that the public has a lot of say in what we do. So I have, in the sheriff's stations, and there's 24 of them, I have community advisory councils made up of constituents such as yourself, and they're constantly feeding to the captains of those stations what we can do better. You see, the pressure is always important, no matter how friendly you are. And I know you all support your wonderful police department, but I'm used to a lot of pressure all the time. I'm sure you've read about that. And that's democracy. But rather than get into arguments with people that are wanting certain things to be better, you got to try and do it better. You know, there's got to be this spirit of enthusiasm for change, enthusiasm for more accountability, enthusiasm for a higher educated police agency, meaning mine, and that you're willing to be innovative and creative, and that you're not stuck on something just for the sake of stubbornness. And so that's where my outreach to the county residents is going to be continuous. This valley I know very intimately, and thanks to Richard, he invited me before I was elected to speak before this body. And now every other year or so I come back. When I'm invited, I don't try to bust my way in. Sometimes I'll get to Michael's place, you know, but I think that with Matt, I'll get to his place and have a good meal and try not to get too carried away with the music. He does have a little stage there, and I like to be entertained like we all do. So nonetheless, my point here is that I have councils, advisory councils made up of Iranians, Lebanese, Armenians. I have an interfaith council, and of course, Asian council, and then an African American. I mean, the diversity is here. If I were to sum up LA County and the city combined, we are the diversity capital of the world. And therefore, people come here to improve who they are and to raise families and to take advantage of our schools, which they should, and to do something that's different. And so therefore, when I look at the whole of it all, I believe that life is divine. And the older I get, it becomes more divine. The years are getting shorter. So if you're wondering, well, how old am I? I'm 71 years old. But you see, I don't think like I'm 71. I think like I'm going to be 120. And I got this belief that I'd rather live in the positive side of trying to make things better than to dwell in the past on the negative side and therefore there's a whole lot of ingredients in what I'm doing. So what is the culture of the Sheriff's Department is the first question I'll answer. The culture is to care about people. And I'll tell you, we have a low crime rate. The great LAPD and the Sheriff's Department both have record low crime rates. We're very proud of that, but we still got to drop it even further. But when you look at what is one of the other sides of both our departments, my goal is for the Sheriff's Department to also be not only good at what it does, great at what it does, but to be the most charitable law enforcement agency in America. And I'll tell you how charitable charity can get. You witnessed the World Trade Center come down like I did. I've never been more horrified and shocked in my entire life. I couldn't believe this was happening. This is not real. People jumping off the buildings and this and that. I'm never going to forget that. So what do you do about that? Well, we raise money. So I took Mr. Mayor Giuliani, I gave him $750,000. For who? For the firefighters' families and the police officers who were killed. Now, together, the LAPD and I, we work on boxing. We beat each other up in a boxing ring. And we raise money for the City of Hope Cancer together. And then we do lupus runs together. And these are things you may not hear about, but these are important things. And we even do bone marrow drives. And we have youth centers. They have youth centers, we have youth centers. I have 14 youth centers thanks to Sherman Block. That was his idea. Many of you know Sherman Block. God bless him, great man. So this law enforcement thing has got to be one that's strong, high ethics, moral fortitude, but then you got to be available. You got to help children. You got to help families. You got to be, part of the whole solution, not just waiting for the crime. You got to do it all, and that's kind of where I come from in the Sheriff's Department. I'll recite the core values. Every deputy's got to remember by heart. They don't get out of the academy. I'm not just inspecting the guns to see that they're clean. I want to inspect the brain to see how clean that is. And so what we're coming from is, here's the core values. As a leader of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, I commit myself to already perform my duty with respect for the dignity of all people. The integrity to do what is right, to fight what is wrong. The wisdom to apply common sense and fairness in all that I do. And the courage to stand against racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, and bigotry in all its forms. This is the American law. We don't have choices about this. But you see, the American law is the greatest thing about why our nation is what it is. We are what the world would like to be. So the deputies and the police officers, and I train other police departments in our academy, we try to set forth these ideals so that your trust can be somewhat indemnified, so that you know who you're going to talk to before you even talk to them if you've never met them before, those that wear the uniform. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I can get into more details about, I believe that leadership training should be provided to all levels of government workers. When I first got elected 15 years ago, the thing that I was most perturbed about, even in my own organization, is bureaucracy. I mean, the bureaucracy could come up with thousands of reasons not to do something, and yet, when you have an organization where people are all in the interest of serving and solving a new problem, the bureaucracy seems to be a secondary excuse. You really want creative, non-bureaucratic, responsive forms of fixing problems. Don't give me any excuses. You got to ask for 10 permissions up the chain of command. And I'm the one that says, if you don't fix that thing or put a plan together with the community to fix it, we're not doing it right way. This isn't about whether you like the color of this or the color of that. Let the community tell you what the color is and do it. There has to be this spirit that everyone can lead. And it doesn't matter what level you're at in the organization. So I got that going, and I probably bit off more than I can chew with that, because we're doing so many things. The second one is that everyone in law enforcement, like myself, that dropped out of college because I needed a job, should go back to college. So I created LASD University system. Who's the system? The system is Cal State LA, Cal State Long Beach, Cal State Dominguez. Trying to get Cal State Northridge, but you'll help me do that. And those are the connections over there. Also Woodbury University. We have National University online. We have Touro University, New York, online. And we have a variety of other private schools, including law schools. And all I did was offer them to bring their classrooms to my buildings all over the county. And they do. Professors come to our facilities, workers just off work, go to their night classes. And it's an easier way to get your education because you don't have to travel to work and then to school and then to home, and all this becomes why people don't want to get educated anymore. It's too inconvenient. And so I've had already 2,500 people get their bachelor's degrees. I have about another 200 with masters, and some of them are crazy like me. They go off and get a doctorate. And one of my employees became a medical doctor, is practicing at Cedars. Was my secretary, if you can believe that. I says, what do you really want to do besides what you're doing with me? She says, I want to be a doctor. So she was at Cal State LA. I said, finish. Oh no, I'm too old, I'm 26. So they're talking the wrong way. So she went and finished the biology. She comes back to the office. I say, what's your grade, by the way? Oh, I got an A. Gee, got an A in chemistry? I was lucky to get a C. But then I said, all right, what's your GPA? Oh, it's 4.0. Shoot, mine was 2 point something. So what I said, then let's apply. So she got accepted into UCLA, USC. She chose UCLA because she could only afford UCLA, which is pretty high anyway. Anyway, she sailed through her pre-med, and then she sailed through her medical school, and she's over there Cedars as a general practitioner. You see, ambition is never limited by your job. And I say to my deputies and all the employees, I got, 10,000 sworn, and then I got the other 8,000 professional. Grow beyond what your job defines. And so they do. And so that's where you benefit, because the spirit of education should never end. And then you and I can help form a subchapter of the Sherman Oaks Homeowner Association. We'll form the book club here if you don't have one. And I'll come down with you and we'll start reading some books together. We'll figure out what we don't know. But you see, this is the key to anything about public safety. You can have the safest home in the world. Okay, you can be crime-free. You can have nothing stolen from you and you're never assaulted. All that can happen. And I think you're living in a very safe area. However, if you don't have a life worth fighting for, you're not safe. You're not safe because something has gone in there where you've said to yourself, I'm going to stop my growth. You don't stop growing. Nobody stops growing. You just keep on working that noodle that is the most miraculous thing that we've been given. The most incredible thing that could ever be created is the human mind, and I'm one to encourage it. I just keep on cheerleading people at work, cheerleading here, saying, hey, let's get on with our God-given talents and do whatever we can to make a difference, big or small, doesn't matter. So that's kind of the whole deal right there. So I got a lot of active people, got a few knuckleheads, but I'll take care of them. And by that I mean shape up or ship out. So thank you very much for letting me chat with you.
Thank you. And Matt Epstein has some questions from the audience, and if you have questions, please bring them up here and I'll give them to Matt. And I don't think, is this working, Natasha?
Yours is working. All right. First question is actually from me. Is this working? How many miles a day you running now?
Well, I try to do 8, but I've been slacking off. I did 6 this morning. I do usually about 35 to 40 a week. I've been doing this for 35 years, so it's no brain anymore. But it's part of the ritual of long life. That's all it is.
Love it. It's terrific. Thank you. All right. These questions are not from me, so I'm going to say the person's name. If you can stand up, that way he can address you directly. This is from Wilma. Right there.
I will.
3 cheers for dealing. 3 cheers for dealing with the pedophile deputy by removing him from active duty and suspending his pay. Would you kindly teach or talk to Superintendent Deasy to do the same with pedophile teachers?
You know, thank you very much for asking that. It's a tough question, by the way. There's something going on in certain government agencies that kind of befuddle me, because all you need is one rule in the school district, and that is, on a level of committing a crime, if one involves children who are of the age that the school system serves, and there's a substantial amount of evidence that reflects that the district attorney is going to file charges against you, that you should be automatically discharged. That's it. End of story. And if you don't do it that way, this stuff can drag on forever. And it's not fair to the school system's reputation, and it's definitely not fair to any of the parties involved, including the suspect. You got to get into the system, face the music, and let the outcome be what it is. Now, there is a rule that if you're declared innocent, you know, let's just say the whole thing really never happened, then there might be some proviso for coming back. But why would you have to deal with this thing in a fiduciary way when this is nothing that anybody in our profession, meaning teaching in this case, in the example, you can't be a teacher and do what you do. You know, you can't mess up with kids. And the rules should be so firm that no one wants to mess up with kids because they know they're going to lose their lifeline, which is their work. That's my answer.
Okay. There's the prisons have been in the news lately.
And prisons.
Yeah. And so I have three questions that are all prison related, but I'm going to ask them individually. First one's from Lauren Naiman. You here? Lauren?
Lauren, yes, Lauren.
Okay. If a person gets a 10-year sentence to state prison, how much time will they actually serve? And then our second part to that is, when the inmate is released, how are they watched after they are on parole?
Okay, the 10-year sentence, if it's off to the prison system, I'm not confident as to how much time they'll serve, but they'll generally try and work their way up to a full sentence served. But there are provisions if you behave yourself and you don't, and you do a job in the prison system, they'll take off 5 days a month for one, and then 5 days a month for the other. So it's like 1/3 of the sentence is reduced because of good time, work time. That's what it's called. So I suspect on a 10-year sentence that might be about 6.5 to 7 years.
Okay. Let's not have any shout outs from the audience. If you have a question, please just write it.
That's Lauren on a follow.
My question was.
Okay. Okay, sir, we don't have shout outs from the audience. I'll reread the question. I think you answered the question. The second part is that when an inmate is released, how are they watched after the parole? And then we have other questions.
Okay, the second half of that is that on the release side, they come to Los Angeles, they come to the county. We have a parole compliance program. The LAPD has the best, I'll say that. And that is they have about 150 police officers who do nothing but check in on these parolees at the various places where they are being reporting into, and even where they're doing programs. And the Sheriff Department has a similar operation as well. 40% of all the people that come out of the state prison system will come to the city of Los Angeles in all aspects of where the city is. The other 60% is scattered between all these other cities, these other 87 incorporated cities, and then the county area.
Okay, thank you. Dan Anderson? Okay.
Bye, Dan.
What kind of prison sentences are the ones that are being released early, prior to the full terms, due to the budget and overcrowding?
Those that are county sentenced, and those are people who are sentenced in the county jail for any period of 1 year or less. The average sentence for those county offenders is about 45 days. It can involve everything from minor drug usage to drug driving to some vandalism, something that is a what you call violent type offense. And that group is generally on the 45-day level for the county prisoners. So when it comes to the AB 109, this is a non-violent, non-sexual, non-serious state offender. We have about 7,000 of those, no, excuse me, we have 6,000 of those in the system. They'll serve about 2/3 of their sentence. Some of them have been in jail for over a year or two before they're convicted. The time they were in jail before they're convicted applies to the sentence. So some of them will get out in a week or two, or some of them will get out in a year. The average is a year after conviction.
Okay. Tom Carter, Tom, are you here? Wants to know, what is the average level of an education of a person in LA County Jail?
You know, the average level is below 12th grade. We have variable numbers, but it's about 40% did not finish high school, up to 60%. It just depends on how this population mixes. And this is a good reason for why I have 3 charter schools in the jail where they can get their GED or their high school diploma. And when they do that, believe me, sometimes for these guys and gals, it's the first thing they've ever done where they're recognized in a positive way. We give them the caps and gowns, we give them the full regalia of the robe, and we do tea and little things like biscuits and whatever else, cakes and cookies, and they graduate, and if parents come in there, their kids come in there, and they're crying all over the place because they've done something positive. And I think that's the answer to a lot of the crime problems is people need to get their education back on track.
Okay. And just so you know, I have a couple questions that aren't going to be asked only because they're not sheriff-related questions. They're more council people related. So we'll forward those since both of those, a couple of these did have your emails or phone numbers. So we'll get those to the right parties. Seth Weinstein. Okay.
Seth.
Sheriff Black, I understand security inside courtrooms is an issue. However, when individuals surrender inside courtrooms to be taken into custody, is it necessary for them to be handcuffed and escorted through the side door rather than simply walked into the custody area, particularly in misdemeanor courtrooms such as DUIs?
I think the handcuffing process or procedure is based on the individual's safety and the public safety. What's strange about anything that's regarding conviction, it's very traumatic. Even if the person knew they were guilty, they get that final point of conviction. It's a high peak emotional period. We have seen some people do some strange things. They try to run, escape. Others, if it's another party involved in the prosecution, they try to attack that person. It doesn't happen often, but it happens often enough, and that's where we do the handcuffing.
Okay, that's it for a question, but let me ask one final question. There's been a lot written in the paper about some of the problems with inmates having mental and medical problems.
Right.
Especially, can you address especially the mental illness issues within the jails?
Yes, you know, that's one of the tragedies of the criminal justice system. There are not many tragedies, but this is one of them, and that is that there are people who literally are not capable of sustaining themselves in a stable way. They need their medication, they fall off their medication. You know what happened when the laws changed and it said that no one can be somewhat institutionalized in a state mental health hospital indefinitely. So everyone's coming out. And so when they come out and they're not taking their meds, they become destabilized and it becomes a jailing problem because they had either broke a window or stepped out and got in a fight with somebody and ultimately got arrested for a charge. And sadly, even though we have a mental health court judge, Judge Tynan, and he and I work closely together, my jail is full of people who shouldn't be in jail. Their problem mentally is stronger than their charge. And yet, I'm trying to unwind this in a big way, to be honest with you, because the incapacitation of the individual and the charge don't balance. And they should be put into a medical treatment facility of some type so that they can stabilize, and at the same time, those that commit crimes because they knew what they wanted to do, they in turn will have the space in the jails because we are coming near the limit. I can hold 20,000 prisoners for 19,000 now, but I would love to see more work done, and I am doing it, so it's not just hoping somebody else does it. I've got Darrell Steinberg, who's the President Pro Tem of the Senate, coming down later on this week, and so I can keep on begging for new money to shift this population into community treatment centers, and then we can help secure those centers if people get nervous.
Thank you. We have one other thing. We have a lottery that Jules will bring over to you.
Legal lottery. Yeah.
This is legal. Jules, why don't you go over there and then please pick up your paperwork and Elke will be able to collect it. But more importantly, in a second or two, please come forward and ask your individual questions of the sheriff.